So, just as Juan has already mentioned a little bit of background, so we received a letter that was sent by some PCWP member organizations, and the letter has been shared with you along with the minutes from the meeting that we had with this small group. So, you receive now this link agenda with all the relevant links and documents attached. You've received this way ahead of the meeting. And so this is what we'll be discussing today.
I can maybe fill in just by giving a little bit of context on this work. So, for starters, I'd just like to say that I'm not. I in no way spearheaded any of this, so I'm really just, I guess, a spokesperson for a smaller group of PCWP members. And it was initially Francois from Eurodis who reached out and suggested drafting this informal letter, which was then to be followed up with more formal discussions with everyone in this room and online. Um, and I guess also another important point to state first up is that we really appreciate the excellent work that EMA is doing in the working party, and to involve all of us as members. And really, the premise for this letter that was drafted was to support EMA better, to increase our involvement and engagement with the agency, for the benefit of the working party, but also of the agency. So the letter, which I think you should all have received, was initially developed last August, and it's coming. All good. And initially, it was developed with a group of 6 or 7 organisations, and the reason why these particular organisations were involved was because prior to COVID, we've never really had a contact list or a directory of people within the working party. So essentially, Francois reached out to people that he knew. Oh, here we go. Reached out to people that he knew from a few different organisations, and you can see the logos here. And that led to the drafting of an informal letter, which was sent to EMA in August 2022. And it was felt that this was a good timing for an initial discussion because of the new mandate, and also because the co-chair had just been elected, and since then, obviously, Marco has taken over. And the goal was really to start this off as an exploratory discussion. We then had a follow-up meeting with the EMA in October, and it was stated then that we would widen discussions to the whole of the working party, and that's what we're doing today. Okay. So in the letter, as you may have read, we identified a few different areas for enhancing the functioning of the working party, and they are listed here on the next 2 slides. So first of all, in terms of meeting format and organisation, you'll all have noted that agendas for joint meetings in particular are increasingly busy. There's an increasing number of initiatives that are up and running and reporting, and it was felt that it was challenging for all members' voices to be heard, particularly in these busy joint meetings, but also to a certain extent in the meetings of the Patients and Consumers Working Party. We also felt that there was a big focus on, particularly during COVID, on informational presentations. And while these were very useful and appreciated, there was maybe less scope for interactive discussions and feedback from members of the working party. And then finally, and I think that what was interesting here is that it overlaps to a certain extent with some of the feedback from the survey that Julia presented. The idea that although the Healthcare Professionals Working Party and the Patients and Consumers Working Party sometimes have similar goals, it should be acknowledged that they do not always overlap. So there is value really on creating space for opinions of members of the working party to be heard at higher volume. And we made some suggestions of how changes could be made to the functioning of the meetings, for example. So this would include maybe shorter presentations and more time for structured interactive discussions. And I know some changes are currently being made, and we've noted some adaptations in, for example, how the agendas are structured. Another suggestion was to provide pre-reads and maybe consult with PCWP members who are involved in initiatives prior to organising presentations at the meetings, so that those presentations can be tailored to the needs of the people in the room. A second common strand was we felt that there wasn't maybe as good an understanding as they could be on how PCWP members are involved in different initiatives. So I think everyone in this room, or most people in this room and online, will be involved in task forces, working groups, advisory boards. But we felt that there was little shared awareness within the working party or within the organizations of who is doing what and where and how. And we felt that this was a missed opportunity. Also, from for the first point being to really understand how we're involved, and also for people who are joining the working party to learn how they, in turn, can become involved in the different initiatives. And an enabler here would be potentially a directory or a contact list for PCWP members. And this could really support making those connections between PCWP members and allow us to share experiences. Because as we all acknowledge, these are very short meetings. There's not a huge amount of time for discussions within the meetings or around the meetings. And having a directory would just mean that we could reach out individually through emails or even organize focus groups just to really capture some of those experiences and learn from other members as well. The third point was on capacity building. So François had noted that from a previous survey on satisfaction from EMA experts and committee members, they had reported approximately 50% satisfaction survey with patient contributions to initiatives. And it was felt that this indicated that there was room for improvement and a need for more support and training and mentoring for organizations, but also individual patient advocates on how they can meaningfully contribute to EMA procedures. And also that I think that ties in with a few of the points raised in the survey. So the final 2 points that were raised in the letter and discussed in the follow-up meeting were on working groups and topic leads, and then support to the PCWP co-chairs. So I understand that in the past, EMA organised specific working groups on topics of interest that allowed PCWP members a forum to discuss specific topics in greater detail. And it was felt that as the scope of activities is very broad, with so many new and specialized topics being brought to agendas, reinstating these working groups could be a useful forum to allow these discussions. Although it was acknowledged that this involved a really substantial amount of effort on the part of the EMA, and that perhaps there may be a way to identify areas of overlapping interest, for example, on patient involvement in procedures, that would be of value both to the PCWP and to the EMA. And an enabler for setting up these working groups could be a directory, as mentioned just previously. This could also help identify for the co-chair, and this ties in with the support to the co-chair topic, help to identify people in the PCWP who could be consulted as reference points on specific agenda topics. And we also felt that it may be of value for the co-chair to receive support from other members of the PCWP from their areas of interest, but also in supporting on developing agendas and making sure that agendas, when developed, really meet the needs of the PCWP, as well as alleviating some of the organizational burdens. So a lot of these points were really positively received during that meeting, and I'm just going to hand back to Maria to present next steps.
Thank you, Ange. And indeed, it was a very productive discussion. So from our side as well, obviously with the end of what we were calling business continuity planning, we were able to return to more face-to-face meetings. And in fact, we're making these hybrid to allow for more people to attend. The face-to-face meetings mean that we can have longer meetings and we can discuss more topics. Obviously, when we were just online, we couldn't keep you there for 2 days of 8 hours each. It was just not feasible. So we had to shorten the meetings and we had to reduce the number of topics and focus on what was critical for you to know at that time. And also the return to face-to-face meetings enables this as well, the PCWP only plenaries, which I think today is a really good example of the kind of working meeting that we can have when we're all together as well. And these kind of discussions and exchanges, which are a little bit harder when you're online. So we have taken on board also to prepare background material. We link these in the relevant places in the agenda and we try to send them as early as possible. So you can see previous presentations on the same topic, recordings, any relevant documents that you want to read. And we try to do this ahead of the meeting. No, we have been doing this ever since we've had this dialogue with the PCWP. We have been doing this and sending linked agendas ahead. And where possible, we've asked presenters to identify 3 take-home messages, and this was also a request in previous times as well, to just focus on what were the key messages. So this is not always necessary and not always practical, depending on the topic, but you'll see tomorrow as well that we have some take-home messages in some of the key presentations. So the idea of the reinstatement of the topic groups, and I think the topic groups worked very well. They were very interesting. We had some joint ones with HCPWP as well. And of course, the choice of topics has to reflect the work plan of the working parties, which is agreed with you all. We would, as Ange said, we would really have to rely on, if you wanted the topic groups to be reinstated, we would have to rely on you to help run them. Last time, all of the administrative aspects were placed on our team, and that was, this is not something that's feasible going forward. So, we would have to look at the kind of structure of the topic group and how this would be run, and this would have therefore your engagement and your investment in it as well, because you take ownership. It's not an EMA topic group, it's a PCWP topic group. So we could talk about that. And also, I think what's very important is that the topic areas, you are already quite busy and quite burdened with your representation here of your organization. So you could have other experts, other people from your organizations who are leading in that area of the particular topic that could take part in the topic groups. So this is also very important. And with this overview of the roles of the PCWP members, we also internally need to keep track of what you're all doing in different activities. So we have a little inventory that we would also like to build on. But of course, there's the issue of the General Data Protection Regulation. And so we'd have to make sure that we comply with that if we were to compile and share information. So this is something that we could look at from our side, but we'd have to get agreement from the working party in order to go forward and talk to our legal colleagues about sharing that kind of information about contact details. We can certainly let you know who's in which particular area, who's working in the ETF, who the emergency task force, or in the big data steering group. But for example, contact details and then other areas of expertise that you would maybe like to share and bring into the working party that you'd like to share with everyone is something that we would have to explore together. And then we'd also have to look at maybe how we can share working documents. We are now using SharePoint. We're migrating from our previous archiving system to using SharePoint, which we can also share with external people to make documents. And this would possibly be another way of more collaborative work together. So this one is, as Ange said, it's maybe a topic that we should discuss at a later time when Marco is also here, but also for keeping an eye on the longevity of the PCWP. I think it is something that we could look at, how to support the co-chairs, and this also includes Juan as well, from one mandate to another. Would be at the discretion of the co-chair. We could, another topic that was raised in the letter was also expansion of the member's voice as well. So whether we take some things within the working party meetings, we have been using a lot of webinars for additional information as well. And I think this has been working very well because it's a more discrete time. It's a 2-hour session. It's a training. So we're using lots of things. We could maybe expand the member's voice into these satellite webinars. So there's lots of food for thought here. So we thought we'd do this joint presentation to show that, I even came over to sit next to Ange to show that there's collaboration and harmony. And we really would love to hear, I hope that you did have an opportunity to read the letter and the minutes of the meeting, and we'd like to hear your thoughts on any of these topics. And if it's easy, we can always just go back and put the slides up. But yes, please feel free to give us your thoughts as well.